We are reading excerpts from the stories that we read.
Tyler Burdick,
Sarah Homer,
Danny Murphy,
Amy Glasser,
Chris Martin,
Duncan Rizzo, Sarah Wagner, Heather Casper, Timmy Barron,
Kevin Green.
It's raining, hard, but what do you expect? This is London. And here I am at house number 131. Green wooden door, stone steps. The wood has started to rot, and there's litter all over the front path. I can't even be sure if there's anyone still here, and I'm not even certain if I'm willing to find out. I pull out the letter that was mailed to my son, Ike, all those years ago. The return address matches. This is the place. I stroke my gloved hand, then raise it slowly. It hovers just a few inches from the door. To knock or not to knock? I'll be turning 65 in a month, and when that happens, I'll no longer be a pilot. We can't have too many old geezers getting lost up in the sky with large commercial aircraft, can we? That's not what they said, but that's what they meant, all right. Given that this has been my life, all my life, since I was 20, some people might think I'd be all broken up. But I'm not. To call my work hell would be doing a disservice to a warm and possibly tropical climate that has no need of employing operators of transportation. It's odd, I know, since most people would jump at the chance to see the world for a living. But when you're forced to do it according to a timetable that some schmuck in a nice cozy office drew up, and you're forced to constantly zip from one place to another according to that very same timetable with only just enough time to rest in preparation for your next voyage, well, at that point, very active traveling becomes, well, pleasure it isn't. When I started out with the airline, it was different. By that time, I'd already had my license for a while, and quite a few hours of experience under my belt. So I was itching to prove my worth to a company that was able to fund the way of life I wanted to give to Anne. That's part of the American dream, isn't it? Being able to spoil your wife. I wore the name tag with the words, Philip Sanderson, proudly on my chest. My first major flight was to London, and the night before I left, Anne and I celebrated, heavily. Ike came along about 9 months later. I remember exactly what I was doing when I received the call that my son was born. I was vomiting in the bathroom of a hotel in Paris after having eaten a plate of undercooked seafood. The city of love had certainly seen some lovelier days. But by then, I had already grown dissatisfied with my line of work. I traveled far too often for far too long for my trips to mean anything anymore. Work had become a necessity that only served to benefit my loved ones. The irony wasn't lost on me. I never saw them, except for quick hellos and quicker goodbyes. There is a point in every man's life where he forms his opinion of the nature of the world. And for me, it was when I discovered that the world was an unfeeling system run by mechanical clockwork. Sentimentality had no place in it. We do things because they need to be done, nothing more, nothing less. I had to endure because I had to provide, and if I could not endure, my position would be swiftly ripped from my hands by my superiors without any thought of those I provided for. I was never actually threatened with this, but I knew that this was the reason I needed to keep my performance level as high as I possibly could. What's the best way to get to know someone without having to confront them? You reach out to those that knew the person best. Because a man is defined by his relationships. Number 131 understood that. But if you sever those relationships and leave a person alone with only his thoughts for hours on end, he'll eventually come up with some dangerous ideas. Mine was alcohol, my method of escaping from a reality that was too mechanical for me. I had to be careful, of course, as I could not drink on the job, nor let it be known that I had what my father would have called a little drink problem. But I would almost always celebrate time off with at least one full bottle. During periods of extended time off, I was even more out of control. I remember flying to London once, and upon arrival, I was told it would be 3 days before I was needed again. I visited a pub, got drunk, meandered along the River Thames, and ultimately woke up confused in the flat of a blonde stranger I met earlier that night. Needless to say, I never mentioned this to Anne. What I didn't then know was that there were things she was keeping quiet about too.
About me. My name is Brandon. I'm 18 years old and probably a superhero, though if I told you my identity, I'd have to kill you. I'm from New Jersey, land of the spray tans and all of Earth's idiots, and I chose to stay here to bring the population of non-idiots up to 1 and attend Rutgers University, where I'm studying computer science. I'm going to own Google, Apple, and the world one day. Until then, I like to play World of Warcraft, Half-Life, and Team Fortress 2, and collect Lord of the Rings memorabilia. This blog contains scathing reviews of popular games, musings on the idiocy of the frat boy type I'll surely encounter at school, and an occasional personal post to give you an insight into the life of the last gentleman left on Earth. Reveries and Passions. 31st of August 2014, 3:14 a.m. My first night at Rutgers has come to a fruitful close, my compatriots. I didn't expect things to go this well this quickly, but here we are. Who am I to question that surprising goddess, fate? I attended a party at the Alpha Phi Delta fraternity house, a mysterious and, frankly, undesirable place that I never foresaw myself setting foot in. But my roommate, who seems harmless enough, invited me along. I decided to attend as an experiment to see what life was like at the other end of the IQ range. It was exactly like you'd see in one of those imbecilic movies about college. But then I saw her, a veritable Aphrodite shaking her long golden curls and tiny waist around the dance floor. Dear readers, I have never seen a girl quite like that one. Though she was clearly drunk, she moved with a grace that I didn't believe existed in anyone but Galadriel until this night. And then things escalated. She stepped out of the circle of girls dancing around her, who were all Medusas with 2 left feet compared to her, and over to the refreshment table for another drink. I quickly headed there from my solitary spot on the opposite wall and went for the bottle of Sprite she was reaching for. Our hands brushed. She looked up at me startled and apologized quickly. "No need, milady," I said, and took her cup from her and poured her a drink. She looked startled, clearly taken aback by my chivalry, and said, her voice angelic, "Thanks. What's your name?" "Brandon," I replied, tipping my plaid fedora at her. She looked at it for a few seconds and then at my face, no doubt shocked that such a dapper gentleman could exist in a space like the frat house. "And yours?" I prompted her. Clearly the alcohol she had mixed into her previous cups of Sprite had taken its toll on her. Drinking is a nasty habit that can be broken, though, and did not diminish her other perfections. "Hannah," she slurred, smiling and sticking her hand out into my chest, clearly meaning for me to shake, but missing her mark. "Where are you from?" "I'm from Chicago and I'm studying dance here." "What do you study?" "Computer science, and I hail from this cesspool of a state," I replied, giving her a knowing smile. Surely she'd understand my derision for all things Jersey. "Why did you decide to leave Chicago? A city girl like yourself should have better sense than to give up that life for this one." She furrowed her brow in the cutest way and said, "I really wanted to be in New York, but couldn't afford to live and go to school there, so I came here. But I definitely don't feel like I'm settling. I love Jersey. My grandparents retired to the shore, so I've been here plenty before, and everyone on campus has been super nice so far." "Oh, shame," I said. "I turned down Columbia to stay in-state, just for the tuition discount, though, and then Rutgers gave me a ton of scholarships on top of that. I'm sure New York will wait for you until you've soft through 4 years in its dumpy neighbor." "I actually have to go to the bathroom. Do you want to keep this Sprite?" Hannah put the cup on the table, reeled around, and hit me lightly with her curls, sending the scent of raspberry shampoo through the air and straight to my brain. "Have a fun night, Brian." As I watched her hips sway back through the crowd, I picked up the cup and drank. I could faintly taste her lemon chapstick on its rim. Walking back to my original place on the wall, I thought about changing my name.
Susan shuffles from the floor over to her desk to Google her mom. Almost instantly after typing in Cassie, Cassie Devine comes right up. Her Wikipedia, filmography, and IMDb are all clicked on to examine in detail. Almost every romantic comedy from the 80s appears with Cassie Devine as the leading lady. One title strikes a particular note with Susan, Flight Delay, about a pilot who stops the plane to run back to Cassie's character in order to profess his love to her. Cute. But Susan mainly looks at this one for a longer time because it also so happened to be her first taste in performing. Sure, it was as young passenger number 4, but it was electrifying and made her love the craft. It was also here that she began, like the rest of the world, to idolize Cassie Devine. However, after years of missed birthdays and curtain calls, Susan and Cassie aren't anything but close. Susan musters up her energy in the form of 2 quesadillas and 3 iced coffees. God bless Seamless. She decides to contact her mother. But first, she makes a quick ring to her friend Rebecca. Well, as good a friend as anyone can have in New York, and asks for advice. Susan, in the middle of conversation. I really don't think I can just, call her out of the blue, you know? / I don't really think I'd be able to stomach a phone call with her. Rebecca. Well, you'll be living with her, so you're gonna have to stomach more than just talking to her. Might be a bad sign that your body vomited the mere thought of her, too. Do they have Pepto-Bismol in LA, or just kale? Susan. No, seriously, what do I do? I wish this was a Snapchatable request. Do you think I could email? Rebecca. I'm pretty sure every mom's response to an email is, well, why didn't you call me? Can you not be bothered? Susan. Even moms who haven't wished their kid a happy birthday since Y2K? Rebecca. Fair point. They hang up and Susan begins crafting her email. She realizes this will take longer than she thought. Susan. Dear Mom, no, that's too formal. But are we informal? Hey Mom sounds too weird and like I'm broken homeless. Okay, well I guess I am. In order to buy some time, she decides the only thing less painful than this is to call Declan. In a shocking turn, he actually answers. Declan. Hey. Susan. Hey? Thanks for calling me back. Declan. Oh, I'm sorry, I've been busy. Susan realizes that she has to yell right now. Mainly because of her mom, but since she's not on the phone with her, a shitty boyfriend is a perfect runner-up victim. Susan. Okay, well, whatever. I've been busy too. And I want to let you know that I've been doing great while being busy. And I've also been doing great at keeping in touch with all my friends. But that might be harder to do with me, because as of tonight, I'll be in a different time zone for who knows how long. Yeah, that's right. LA wants me, and when Hollywood calls, you answer. Maybe you should learn a thing or two from that. Well, have a great life, I guess. Declan, wait, what? Susan hangs up and felt good for 2 seconds until she realizes she was kind of being crazy. But, there's a ton of men in New York that think she's crazy. What's one more? She goes back to working on the email. Susan. Hi, Mom. Hope all is well. I'm going to be in Los Angeles for a bit on business. Yeah, business. That makes me sound like I have my shit together. I was wondering, would you want to get together and talk? I haven't booked a hotel yet, so I'd be more than happy to meet at your house and we can reconnect a bit. Take care, your daughter, Susan. Susan. Could it be? Do I sound badass in this? Susan sends her email and is extremely proud of herself. But now she realizes she has 6 hours to pack and get to the airport. So she repacks a suitcase that drunk Susan made with abandon last night and starts to jet off.
Out of all the things Sophie wanted to do at Holland Park today, standing in a ruined house with a sobbing 3-year-old and a 6-year-old in the middle of a huge temper tantrum wasn't top of the list. Ginny was a baby, Sophie reminded herself. Of course a 3-year-old didn't know that running off while Mummy was ordering lunch wasn't okay. And yes, maybe if Ginny hadn't grabbed Hannah's dolly as revenge for spilling her juice box, Hannah wouldn't have run after her. But as the eldest of her sisters, it was up to Sophie to be the responsible one. Mummy always said that the girls were going to drive her mad. Sophie was beginning to think they had driven her mad too. What looked like a ruined house moments before was now a beautiful outdoor theater. The faded stones were now gleaming, and on the previously empty stage was a beautiful garden set. How strange. Even stranger was the small girl who had appeared out of nowhere. She was staring at Sophie and her sisters with wide blue eyes, as if she was as startled by their presence as they were by hers. If Sophie had to guess, and being the eldest, her guesses were usually better than her sisters', this girl was about her own age. She was much shorter, which was to be expected. Sophie took pride in being especially tall for a 9-year-old. This girl must have a weird father, as she was wearing a lot of glittery makeup and a large white tutu that Sophie's father would never have let her out of the house wearing. "Why are you dressed so funny?" Ginny blurted out. Ginny was a baby, Sophie reminded herself. Of course a 3-year-old couldn't be expected to have perfect manners. The new girl's eyes narrowed. "I'm a ballerina. Aren't you ballerinas too? Kids can't have other parts in the opera. Why aren't you in your costumes?" "We aren't ballerinas," Sophie responded, taking charge before Ginny could embarrass her again. "We didn't even know there was an opera. We're lost!" Hannah, it seemed, did not like being ignored. "And we need to find our Mummy before she notices we're missing and gets cross." "Well, you should have waited at the place where you last saw her. Everyone knows that." Sophie bristled. She did not like seeming foolish in front of her sisters. "I know that. We were just going back to the cafe now. Come on, Hannah, Ginny." But to Sophie's horror, the park through the entrance looked nothing like the Holland Park she knew. The field was filled with boys playing football, up in the air. The dogs and owners were walking side by side. Worst of all, the pathways were all twisted around, so she had no idea which one would lead back to the cafe. The important thing, Sophie told herself, was not to show fear in front of her sisters. Now we're really lost! Hannah had tears streaming down her long nose. At 6 years old, Hannah was most certainly not a baby. There was really no excuse. Ginny looked around in wonder. Are we going to be like Alice and Dorothy, Sophie? They got lost like this too. Sophie knew how to seize an opportunity when she saw one. Yeah, that's right. We're not lost. We're just going on an adventure. Her sisters looked amazed. Yay, an adventure, Hannah squealed. Wait, but didn't Dorothy and Alice almost die? Do you know anyone who can get us out of here? Sophie turned her attention back to the ballerina. She didn't look particularly promising, but she was the closest thing they had to Glinda. Huh, you are lost. You really should be more careful. Well, if anyone can help you, Pavo can. He's the one in charge here. I'm not sure where he is now, though. He goes wherever he wants. Great, we'll ask someone who knows more than you do. Sophie really did not like this girl. Ginny, however, was looking at the ballerina in awe. Are you really a dancer? Yep, tonight is my first show. I'm Anna, by the way. I'm going to be famous one day. Sophie rolled her eyes. Unfortunately, Ginny seemed impressed. Wow, I'd be really scared of dancing in front of all these people if I was you. For the first time, Anna looked sad. Well, I've been practicing really hard, so I know the dance. But to be honest, I'm the smallest girl here. Some of the other girls like to pick on me since I look so little. And I'm not as experienced or as pretty as the other new girls. I just wish my mummy was here tonight. Sophie wasn't really paying attention. She was anxious and scared, not that she would ever admit that to her sisters. How were they ever going to get out of here?
You're never alone. Those were the last words my father said to me before they took him. They came for him last night. I was asleep in my sleeping bag when my father woke me, telling me we had to get up. Fear was in his eyes. This was something I was used to seeing on the faces of people, but not on my father's face. He was brave and always knew what to do. He was staring at me with a blank look. His face had grown pale. I knew something wasn't right. We were in the Natural History Museum, or what had been the Natural History Museum. It was our home, or at least as much of a home one could have nowadays. It had been a year since we first explored it, scavenging for food. I wandered into the mammal hall and just walked around the exhibit for hours. I had never seen big animals, not big like this. We had found a new home, and now he is gone. After he woke me up that night, we ran upstairs to the space exhibit. There was a space shuttle in there that had a little hatch that I could just fit in. I climbed into the hatch and looked back at my father. He stared at me one last time, tears welling in his blue eyes. Dad, I said, please don't go. Just stay in the hatch. There's room for both of us. Fear no longer shrouded his face. He looked at me hard, holding my shoulders. Jess, those are bad men down there. They'll hurt you, they'll beat you, and they'll do terrible things to you. But I don't want you to be afraid. I won't let them do those things to you, and you won't let them do those things to you. You are a strong, brave young woman, and I love you so much. I'm just going to see where they are going. Do not leave this hatch. Do not make any noise. Wait till I come back to get you. Dad, please, just stay, I said. I did not feel strong or brave right now. I felt scared. All I could do was cower in fear in my hatch. Never be scared, Jess. I'm always with you. You're never alone. Then he walked away, closing the hatch shut. 30 minutes passed, and still there was no noise. Then an hour went by, then 2. I waited in that cold black hatch for 12 hours. I counted every second. He never returned. The silence was the hardest part. I wanted to cry, so hard and loud I'd tear the walls apart. But my father was right. I had to be silent. I willed my body to be still and waited for the sounds of his voice. 12 hours and 20 seconds later, I knew I'd never hear that voice. I opened the hatch then and stepped out into a frightening unknown. Light is pouring in from the holes in the roof. It's no longer dark, but the silence remains. I want to call out. I want to scream for my father. I have two humongous pains, and I don't know which is the greatest. The fact that my father is gone, or that the men he spoke of are outside, waiting. They'll hurt me, he said. Beat me. Do such things, and then he'd turn away from me, unable to continue. Exhaustion washes over me. I hadn't slept. I collapse on the ground, banging my knees on the marble floor. The last thing I remember before blacking out is his face. You're never alone, he'd assured me. Then why do I feel so alone?
My sister Emma is the polar opposite of me. To our parents used to say, Emma is the ball of energy and Olivia is the rock that keeps her grounded. She is a Leo and therefore always has an eccentric energy about her. As a young child, she was nonstop moving, nonstop talking, nonstop thinking. When she was 3 years old, it was as if she had 3 shots of espresso in her at all times. Even though she's a year younger than me, and she's accident prone and constantly getting hurt, Mom and Dad always joke that she's my protector. She would always order food for me because I was too shy to speak to strangers. If I was being bullied by other children on the playground, she would say something to them regardless of if they were older than her or bigger or both. I'm not allowed in the ocean without her because I'm not a very good swimmer. She is brutally honest, blindly loyal, and so much fun. I have pin-straight blonde hair and she has blonde banana curls. She always had food on her face and scrapes on her knees. I haven't always been the nicest sister to her, but I admire her immensely. She always babbles on about hypothetical situations, spills food on all of her clothes, loses her temper, and simultaneously kisses my father on the cheek for no reason. I, on the other hand, rarely make direct eye contact in conversations. I'm painfully awkward when meeting new people. I like to listen to what other people have to say, but I don't divulge much. I don't get along with people very well. In fact, Emma says I have terrible taste in friends. I like to spend my days at home, usually by myself. Emma is a ray of sunshine. Everyone says it, and it's true. I'm a Cancer, and my sister always says that it fits me perfectly. She thinks I am puzzling, which is just her nice way of saying I'm different to everyone else. Emma and I were always attached at the hip. Everybody used to say, wherever there is one winter sister, you can always find the other. Throughout our high school years, we were both nominated valedictorians. Emma is naturally smart. She never opened a book. She never had any intention of using her intelligence. She just loved to write. I had to work really hard for my grades because it was my dream to work for the White House when I grew up. We went to the same college, and Emma made a ton of friends, of course. I found people that I actually got along with, and we grew apart for a bit. After college, we moved to Paris together. She was bartending and writing plays, and I was interning for the U.S. Embassy. We both wanted different things at the time. I was into politics, and she was into her writing, but we didn't want to separate, so she came with me when I got the internship to Paris. One night, we went out clubbing to a place we've gone 100 times before. Emma was talking to a suave French man named Henri. Of course, Emma speaks as if French has always been her first language. It flows off her tongue like a beautiful melody. I watch alone from a distance as their conversation takes flight, both laughing and smiling uncontrollably. I feel the need to be a part of it. I saunter over and make stupid inside jokes to my sister. The man, at first annoyed by my interruption, has a shocked look on his face. "You're Americans," he says, in a way too friendly manner. At least that's how I felt. He was incredibly witty and charming in a boyish way, and he was really interested in us both. We bar hopped all night, and I lost track of him and Emma at a certain point, so I made my way back to the apartment myself. When I entered our apartment, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Henri and Emma were in her room. She was packing her suitcase, and he had a knife to the back of her neck.
I remember it all, everything that happened. I still don't understand how someone who'd been so lucky all her life could suddenly drop so easily. The terror of those days will haunt me to my grave, I sometimes think. My dad had always told me, travel in pods, Kate, never go anywhere alone. Simple, so true. Why didn't I listen? Till then, I thought that going to ground 4 hours away from home would be the scariest thing I'd ever have to face, but I was wrong. How wrong could a person be? It's been 7 years now, and I can still see his face. I can still smell his cheap convenience store-bought cologne and the whiskey on his breath. I can hear his footsteps coming down the stairs, and I'm still, ever still, waiting. London was just as incredible as we'd imagined it being. I was abroad for a whole semester of study. I had the perfect boyfriend, my best friend, and her boyfriend were with me too. "Oh my God," Colleen screamed as she ran through the airport doors to get her first smell of the crisp London air. "This is going to be amazing," I said. We got on the tube, and it was easy to navigate as people had told us it'd be. Once at our apartment, or flats as they call them here, we had a quick look around, and that was it. We were out again. No jet lag for us. We were too amped with excitement. "Bene," Kevin said when we arrived at Westminster and took our first glance at Big Ben. "Holy Moses, it's actually humongous," Colleen added. I had never seen anything like it. "Dorothy and Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore," Brian said. "Come on, Toto," said Colleen, "buy me an English beer." The exploring went on for a straight 2 weeks. We went out and saw all the important tourist attractions, from the London Eye to Piccadilly Circus and everywhere in between. London was so beautiful and so spread out that we were afraid we wouldn't be able to see everything in the short time we had. We decided that even though there was so much to do in London, we were ready to travel. Our first stop, Nice, France. So, I hear the French hate Americans, but Nice is supposed to be like super European and super chill, and it's super warm there. "Who's excited?" Brian said. "Say super a few more times, babe," Colleen said, and Brian shot her a look of sarcasm. I'd never been to a European city before London, now our home, at least for a while, and it didn't count. The buildings were extremely old, with vines growing on their side walls and paint that was peeling. The beach was covered with rocks, but it didn't matter, because Aqua Sea was what we'd come to look at. It was stretched out to a clear horizon. While we were roaming about, we walked up what seemed like a never-ending staircase to the most beautiful, overflowing waterfall, and had a view that went on for miles. That's the last happy memory I had. Funny that it's not tainted by what happened next. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right after we'd seen the waterfall, Brian and Kevin found a staircase that led down to a jetty of rocks. "I dare someone to go jump off," Kevin said. "Are you crazy?" I shouted. "Don't be such a baby, Kate. You go first, tough guy." Kevin then ran onto the rocks to jump, and Colleen and Brian followed. We had put our bags down on the rock behind us so that I was able to take a picture of my idiotic friends. I turned around to take their picture, and within a matter of seconds, my bag was gone. "Guys, where's my bag?" I said, as I was shaking. I knew I was. "What do you mean?" Colleen said, running back to where I was standing. "No, stop, guys. It's gone. I just put it down and it's gone." Staying at a hostel, which none of us trusted, in a room with 16 random people, we'd all agreed to take everything important with us wherever we went. This, of course, included my passport. "Guys, my fucking passport is in there," I screamed, not even realizing that people were now staring. Okay, calm down," Kevin said, as he ran over to hug me. "Where do I go? Do you see anyone? Did it fall somewhere? Help me look," I said. I ran up the stairs to see if I could see anyone, running away with my brand new Michael Kors satchel. I began to feel the tears stream down my face. Kate, Brian screamed, as he pointed over to a group of teenagers who seemed to be smoking pot in a spot below where we were. "Go ask them if they saw what happened, Brian. Go," I said, running back down the stairs and almost falling on my face. When Brian began to use the little French he knew to explain to the kids what had happened and to ask for their help, they simply started laughing, mocking him, and ignored everything that he was saying. When I heard their laughter, I ran off. I needed to find a phone. "Kate," shouted Kevin, "wait." I waved inside. I'll be okay," I said, forgetting again that he had no reason to learn to sign. I ran up the stairs again, looked around, and ran into the first shop I saw.
As she opens the door to her favorite corner cafe, the delicious coffee aroma puts a smile on Brooke's face. She has lived in the city for 3 years now, tried hundreds of cafes, yet none can compare to this one. Even when she studied abroad in Paris, she never found a cafe that stood a chance to this one. She goes about her business and orders her French vanilla latte, just as she has done time and time before. The first sip, although burning hot, instantly wakes Brooke up. She turns to leave, but can't help but notice the corner seat. The countless mornings she spent in those chairs with her ex Liam. The depression hits her as it always does. She'll never be rid of him, not completely. Now she's given up on even trying. His face and all it means is never but a few minutes away from her thoughts. She sips on her coffee, thinks to herself how incredible it tastes and how it will be her last. She leaves the cafe, overcome with feelings so hard to bear she thinks she'll crack. She tries to lighten herself up and enjoy the crisp air. Moments later, she's taken off guard with a blow to her stomach. A frantic young girl has clumsily run into her, forcing her coffee to fly out of her hands and spill all over her jacket. Annoyed, Brooke tries to wipe the coffee up. The girl apologizes quickly and runs off. For some reason she can't yet understand, Brooke is overwhelmed with a desire to follow the girl. Through a window, she sees the girl frantically rummaging through her apartment, running from room to room in a state of panic. Moments later, two men force their way into the building. Within seconds, the young girl climbs out of the window onto a fire escape. Just as she reaches the ground, Brooke sees the men barge into her apartment. Immediately noticing that it is empty, they sprint out of the building and down the street in the same direction as her. Brooke follows. The men catch up with the girl and pull her into an alleyway. Blow after blow, they beat her mercilessly. They steal all valuables she has, which are not much, $20 and a hand-me-down watch. They leave her there, half dead behind a dumpster. Brooke reaches the scene just as the men leave. She calls 911. She runs over to the girl and tries to tend to her wounds, but what can she really do? She is not a medic, nor is she well informed on first aid. The best thing Brooke can think to do is stay with the unconscious girl. As the ambulance appears, Brooke insists on staying by her side as they rush her to the hospital. Everything is such a blur. In that moment, something important in Brooke has changed her forever. She is yet that she doesn't know it.
I stepped onto the docks at Southampton early one morning. As soon as my feet hit the ground, I took off at a brisk pace. I needed to leave the boat behind as soon as I could. As I walked down Long Pier, trying to get out of the shore area and find a train that could get me to London, my mind was racing. My feet were trying to keep up, but my mind was moving so fast, my feet never had a chance. I tried to quiet my mind down. The boat I had just left behind had not just been a boat, but my workplace, where every friend I'd seen for the past year had lived, had been my home. Although I had never hated anything so much as the time I'd spent as a glorified janitor on American Glory, they still had moments of reprieve. Beauty amongst the chaos. Rob falling into the water, that was a day. It was me who got him out. The sting of the North Atlantic as I dived down had made me laugh, crazy laugh, even as Rob bobbed frantically ahead. Since that day, Rob and I had become close. He was one of the few people I'd miss. He was a good guy. I reached the end of the pier, crossed the road, and I was in England. I didn't show my passport, no one searched my bags or anything, but I was in a new country. I guess you could say I was an illegal alien. I continued over to the bus station to look at a map and find my way to the train station and eventually to London. When I finally made it to London, and after a lot of asking around and a lot of being rebuffed, I settled in a room at the Hotel Islet, a despicable little hole in the wall in the shadows of Liverpool Street Station. The room was a single with a small bed. Where'd my legs go? And a sink hanging off the wall. I paid what seemed like nearly nothing when I converted it into US dollars. I liked my little room. There are a lot of people like me staying in the house, either running from something or chasing something else. It was like the name of the hotel was actually I Lay Low. It was the kind of place most people just walked by, but it stood out to those who were in need of going unnoticed for a while. My first few weeks in London were marked by a frenzy of action, so much so that for the first time in a very long while, I wasn't thinking about why I'd come here and what I had to do. I decided I needed to familiarize myself with the city, so I rented a bike at once. And once I had that, the gates of London were open. I would take my bike down from my hotel room in the morning, and each day I would venture off into some unknown place. I never used maps. I was out to smell something out. Mile End, Shoreditch, the city, Hoxton, and other neighborhoods in East London. After a month, when I'd seen everything, how the clubs of Soho closed at midday, or packed at midnight, how Camden made you feel as if you were a member of the Clash, and countless other sights and people, I realized I was enjoying myself too much. I stopped all at once. That's not why I came here. The reason I got on the boat and come here, it's sad, but the best moments I've lived have all been in my head. One morning I woke up with a dream of how the world could be, not just my world, but the one we all inhabit. When I wrote it down, this ideal world crumbled, like all ideal worlds rot with time. When I finished, I looked up and caught myself in the mirror. My stark realization gazed back at me. Was I alone?
Don't look back, I whisper as I watch the young couple attempt to escape. I can't believe you're actually letting them go, my wife says, languidly lounging on the couch while eating her dark garnet grapes. She was once the most beautiful woman on earth, but her marriage to me has drained her of everything wonderful and left nothing but bitterness and hard edges. Ironic, I say to her, considering I let you leave me every half of a year. She knows it pains me to let her go, but I love her, so I make sacrifices. She hates me, though. There's no love for me in her eyes. Oh, please, she says, rolling her eyes and standing up, leaving me alone to watch Orpheus and his love Eurydice run down the passages of my prison. It's named after me, but it is much a prison to me as it is to the dead who find themselves here. Don't do it, I warn under my breath as I watch Orpheus almost sneak a look at Eurydice. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not a monster, and I do want to see the two of them escape. But no one would take the God of the dead seriously if I just let anyone out because of love. My brothers would laugh at me, making me look even more pathetic in comparison to them than I already do. So I had to make a stipulation to their escape. Of course, I knew the stipulation would work in my favor, but they didn't. They've almost made it to the end of the tunnel, but I am still expecting the worst. An eternity ruling the dead will turn even the most optimistic of people sour. There are only so many times you can sentence someone to eternal torture before your heart is hardened. A hardened heart is the only way to survive the pain of inflicting pain on others, a survival tactic, if you will. No one ever gives much thought to the pain of the punisher, but I assure you it is great. I am not an evil man. I am a just man. I can't help it if justice is sometimes harsh. But oh, Orpheus's song had softened my heart slightly, not enough to allow me to give the lovers a foolproof escape, but enough to give them a chance. I am a firm believer that an opportunity is the best gift one can give to another. It allows the person to cradle their own fate in their own hands. It allows them to take responsibility for their life. It also erases some of the blame for me. It won't be my fault when Eurydice is dragged back down to my home. It will be the fault of Orpheus because he cannot help but look back eventually. I know what it's like to lose the love of your life. I must do it every 6 months. When she's with me, my home is a better place, but when she's gone, it is truly hell. I've heard that it's the same above ground. When she's with me, it is cold and desolate, lifeless and bland. It gives me a small satisfaction that the love of my life is so precious to all people, living or dead, whether they even know it or not.